There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. The topic for today's discussion is going to be Windows Intune. More importantly, how does Windows Intune help you modernize your desktop? How does Windows Intune help you with your IT environment? Being an online webinar, I'd like to ask you, please, any questions that you have, ask us, let us know. We'd like to make this as interactive as possible. We'd like to make sure that you get the answers to the questions that you have on your mind, answers to questions that have been bothering you. Whatever questions you have, please ask away. We'd like to make this very helpful and very useful to you. As a way of introduction, Jennifer, do you mind if I ask you to introduce yourself first, and then I'll introduce myself?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Collum. I'm the Director of Marketing for B2B Technology, and we're excited to be one of the chosen partners from Microsoft to be a part of Intune. And you know, as everyone knows, it's a new product, and it's got a lot to contribute for our current customer base. So we're excited to be here.
Fantastic, thank you. So the voice on the phone right now is Corbett. My name is Corbett Hoxland. As a way of introduction, I started with Microsoft in 1995 in South Africa, hence the accent. I moved to the Middle East in about 2003, and I've been the subject matter expert for all things management and endpoint related, so computers, phones, workstations, laptops, that type of thing. So my focus has always been about how do we understand what I have, and once I know what I have, what can I do with it? And that's why I decided to join the New York team in about 2010, because Intune was getting on board, and it just seemed like a perfect transition for us to combine the two. So let us get started. First things first, why are we chatting about Intune? What is it that Intune does for me as an individual? What does Intune do for me as an organization? Intune was designed for a specific set of scenarios. What we are seeing is that more and more the global workforce is more mobile. We have people working from offices, shared workspaces, coffee shops, airports. People no longer come into their place of business to conduct their business. Because of this, we're also seeing that these devices, their computers, their phones, their tablets, are running multiple operating systems, multiple configurations, multiple applications. Long story short, when somebody has an issue and they ask the help desk for support, the call is taking a lot longer than it should. People are experiencing issues that they were never meant to because of this non-standardized environment. The other thing that we're seeing being very, very popular is that more and more users are starting to bring in their own devices, their own computers, their own tablets, their own phones. And what we're seeing is that these users are saying, "Dear IT department, you never gave me the device, you've never prepared the device for me, you haven't given me any software, however, I still expect you to support me." And the IT department is going, "Oh, hold on, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. So how do we get the best of both worlds? How do I allow any user to use any device while still making sure that it is lightly managed, securely managed, and how do I make sure that it is not a threat to my environment?" Those are some of the challenges that we are seeing. Of course, add to this, historically I've needed to stand up a number of servers. Depending on my environment, I might have needed one server, I might have needed a couple of hundred servers to say, my organization is X amount of seats, I need to deploy servers to manage this growing environment. Could Intune help me with this? So we're saying, yes, that's exactly how we designed Intune. We need to make sure that you no longer need an infrastructure. So if you are 5 seats, 500 seats, 5,000 seats, Intune is completely cloud-based. What that means, no server on your premises, no hockey stick, no hockey puck, no software, no hardware device of any sort in your environment. We are completely cloud-based. The next thing we wanted to do was to make sure that we can help you secure, manage, and enforce a level of standardization across your users. Now, I don't need your users to install VPN software. I don't need them to open up a VPN client. I'm just saying, dear users, whenever you are connected to the internet, whether it is checking your stock portfolio, whether it is doing online banking, updating your friend status or your Twitter feed, whatever the case is, as long as you are online, Intune is touching you and making sure you are protected. Lastly, we're saying the world goes beyond just computing devices. We need to make sure that whatever we do for a computer, we can do the same for a mobile device. For my tablets, for my phones, whether it is a Windows phone or whether it is an iPad, an iPhone, or even Android. So we will manage all of those devices for you. So this slide over here is just going to give you a brief summary of what Intune can do for you. Of course, after this is done, it will probably be about another 5 minutes or so. I'm going to open up the Intune console for you, and I will show you what it looks like, how it is, how we designed it, why we designed it, what decisions we made. So the features that we can talk about here is what you would expect from any modern management system. I can provide reporting for you. I can tell you what software you have. I can deploy software. I can deploy updates, whether it's Microsoft updates, non-Microsoft updates. I can tell you how your computers are running. Not only can I tell you that your computers have enough disk space, but I can also tell you that the hard drives are not fast enough. So every month, when your financial people complain and say, you know what, Corbett, my computer is really slow, it's not the processor and it's not the RAM. It's just for that 1 week at the end of the month, their hard drive is just really too slow. So what that means for me is I can take this information and I can go to my CFO or my CIO and say, dear Mr. or Mrs. CFO, I need X amount of budget to address these problems. If I don't get it, great, at least I understand that I can continue to see these help desk requests being logged, but now I know what's going on in the environment. Beyond,
I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there a slide that you would like to share with us right now about this?
oh, please tell me. If I'm not sharing, I'm going. My apologies, everyone. I thought I was sharing.
I am so sorry. I know you don't like slides, and so I wasn't sure.
No problem. My apologies.
Okay. Sorry, everyone.
Well, there we go. There's the slide. Thank you. Oops. The other components that we add to Intune are, how about I provide you with remote assistance? So I'm sitting somewhere in a coffee shop, my administrator's sitting in the office, I need help, they're able to connect to my machine, and they're able to give me the remote assistance I require. Now beyond all of that, why don't I also plug into my Active Directory environment? What this means to an organization is I stop managing the devices that the user is working from, and I start managing the user. So I'll pick on me. If I've got 2 or 3 different computers, 2 or 3 different mobile devices, it's going to be very difficult for me to track what Corbett is doing across those devices if I'm managing only the devices. So instead we said, look, the approach we're going to take is to focus on the user. So as Corbett logs on to 2 or 3 different computers, whether it is a VDI environment, whether it is a Windows XP machine, a Windows 7 machine, I'm able to track Corbett across these devices. Oh, Corbett's accessing a mobile phone? Great, I can pick him up as well. This way I can see exactly where Corbett is and how he is working so that I can give him the best services he needs. Lastly, we've also introduced the ability to manage your mobile devices. So your iPad, your iPhone, and your Android devices, we can manage them. In fact, we can also deploy software out to those devices should you need it. So if you have a new payroll application, a new CRM-based application, I can push that for you, and I can also manage your Windows Phone devices. So as we go through this, I'll show you how all of this comes together. Okay, so Intune was designed with a specific problem in mind. We wanted to make sure that Intune was the easiest and Intune was the simplest management tool that you've ever used. So the reason I told you about my System Center background was to tell you that I've been doing this for a while, and I've seen some of the problems that people have had with on-premises management systems. They are very powerful, they are very flexible. The downside is they can also become very complicated. Our Intune principle was to say, let's keep it very simple, so somebody knowing nothing about a management system can be up and running in a matter of hours versus a matter of months. And as I walk you through the console, I'll show that to you. So we've spoken about all of these components that Intune delivers. The antivirus, the management, the operations management. The one component that I haven't spoken to you about yet is that every single Intune license also includes a Windows 7 Enterprise license to go with it. So that means I'm able to ensure that all of my users are running the best version of Windows today across a range of devices. So if they have a tablet computer, great, I can load Windows 7 onto that for them. If they're running powerful laptops, same thing. I can make sure that I can lock down the applications that are running on that machine. I can make sure that my users are only using what they absolutely need to. Now, of course, I'm going to have to find some sort of middle ground so that my users can get the best experience possible, while my IT department is able to manage and secure those devices. I have to admit that one of my favorite topics when it comes to discussing Intune is how quickly we release a new version. Intune was released about a year ago. Version 2 was released in October, and we're expecting version 3 to be released almost any day now. So we're typically looking at about a 6-month release cycle, meaning we are able to adjust to real-world problems better than any on-prem solution can. So, this is something I wanted you to be aware of. We've said that Intune will manage your computers and your mobile devices. What we've also said is because Intune is going to focus on the user, I'm going to have to blur the line between my devices. So I'm going to say Intune will manage my primary computer plus 4 additional mobile devices. Think of it as companion devices. 2 phones, 2 tablets, 3 tablets and a phone, however you want to break it. 4 non-computers. So what that almost means is for every Intune license that I have, I'm able to manage a computer and 4 companion devices, almost 5 devices per Intune license. So I just wanted everyone to be aware of that as we walk through this. So, the reason Windows 7 Enterprise is so interesting is because of the second point on this slide. You are able to get future versions of Windows as they become available to you. So this being a Windows 8 launch year, when Windows 8 releases later this year, you would get access to Windows 8. Seeing that most folks are already moving onto Windows 7, those applications that they've already tested, already deployed, will work on Windows 8 with the desktop mode running in Windows 8. Windows Enterprise also gives you the ability to run previous versions of Windows. So let's say for argument's sake you absolutely need to run an application in an XP environment and you only want to run it in a virtual machine. Windows 7 Enterprise gives you those abilities as well as the re-imaging rights. So you go and create a single image for your entire organization, deploy it out to 5, 10, 500 workstations, knowing full well that everybody in your organization is running the right version of an operating system, plus the correctly configured version to keep your help desk calls low. So, I am now going to stop this. I'm going to show you Windows Intune. Yes, I need to re-authenticate. Can everybody see my screen?
We can see it on the B2B side.
Beautiful. I will assume that everyone else can see it then too. Alright, so first thing that I want you to notice is that Intune is completely cloud-based. No software to deploy, no software to install. It is all driven through my browser. So what you're seeing in front of you right now is what I'm calling my CXO pane. Just by me walking from one meeting to another, walking to the kitchen for a cup of coffee, I can have a quick look at what is going on in the environment. I can see that I need to speak to my security folks because there's something security related over here. I could say, look, you know what? Let me go and focus on the categories instead. I can see, yep, there are some issues over here that I need to go and address. I can see a computer is running out of disk space. Great, I need to go and make sure that a support call is logged, that the user knows what's going on, that we've moved their data off, so I can get proactive within my environment. What else I can tell you over here is, let me go and have a look at what computers I'm running in the environment. Alright, so I have 66 computers that have almost got full disks. Great, I need to go place a hardware order. 50 to 90%, I'm good over there, not to worry. What operating systems do I have in the environment? Oh, and you know what? I was supposed to have standardized on a single partner. I see I'm running a hybrid of OEM partners over here. Perhaps I want to consolidate. So I could say, you know, once upon a time when I bought those HP machines, it was 6 years ago, that's due for a refresh. Great, I need to go buy 56 of them. I can see how many laptops, desktops, what kind of chassis I'm running within the environment, so I can see where to focus my time. Lastly, what mobile devices am I running and how many do I have? So I can see I've got 24 devices broken up across those operating systems. Let's get started. First things first, Intune is able to integrate with your Active Directory environment. What this means for you is that it allows you to focus on my users, not on the devices. So I can say, within Active Directory, I've got 5, 10, 500 users, 1,000 users. I can now follow them, and I can say, oh, let's go and have a look. Who's in my administration group? Great, let's go and have a look over here. These are all of the people, and I can see how many devices are associated to them. So Kenya has got 7 devices. I can also go and say, I can go partition these users into different groups. So I could say, these users over here, let's just go and add them into another group. Let's go over here. And I can say I need them to be in an administration group, but I also need them to be in a geographical group. So I can say those 20 users belong to the East Coast, and they belong to the sales organization. So they are East Coast sales. The reason that is important to me is that when I deploy software later on, I can say deploy software to only the sales folks. Only deploy it to the folks on the East Coast, only in the New York City, only on the 3rd floor, however I want to. I can partition all of this out for you. Next thing I want you to be aware of here is all of my devices. So what my devices do for me is it looks like they're able to talk to me and say, all right, let's see what I have. I have my iPhones, I have my iPads, I have my Windows Phone. That's very nice. This becomes important because when I start saying, block the camera, deploy this piece of software, apply this firewall, I'm able to carve it out to say, only do it for the folks in headquarters. For my home users, switch off their firewall. But for the folks that are very mobile, or the folks that are in New York, I want you to set the firewall on to the highest settings. I'll show you how we get to that in a couple of minutes. Alright, so we've designed Intune to deliver on your software updates. You don't need a server in place. You don't need to stand up anything. We give it to you out of the box. What we've done with Intune is we've also introduced the capability to say, while you are able to deploy Microsoft updates, why don't we give the ability to also deploy non-Microsoft updates? So if you've got Adobe products, if you've got Apple products, you've got your own internally developed line of business application, I could use Windows Intune to say, let me go and push it out to you regardless of where you are in the world. An example of this. We have a customer that has pushed out I think it's a 4 gigabyte package to their offices around the world, and they were pushing it out to Thailand. And the problem that they faced was that their users never ever came into the office, and they would always be connected over the internet, and they were not the most tech savvy. So we said, great, don't worry about it. Intune sits in the background. You don't know it's there. It does what it needs to do without impacting the end user. So if I'm checking my email or whatever it is, Intune is in the background making sure it does not stop the end user from doing what they need to do. In the example that I'm busy downloading a very large software package or a large patch, what will happen is if that internet connection gets broken, so I leave to go to the coffee shop, I leave to go jump into a taxi or something like that, it will say, stop downloading wherever you are, and as soon as you are online again, regardless of what connection you have, I'm going to start downloading just the remaining bits and pieces. Not the whole file, just the last 3 kilobits, the last 3%, the last whatever we haven't downloaded yet. So it is very, very bandwidth friendly, making sure that the end users aren't upset with the product. Every Intune license includes endpoint protection. So what that means is I'm able to say, for those devices that are always out in the field, or for my computers that are in the office, you already have an AV solution out there. If you don't have an antivirus solution or you're not happy with it, Intune will install for you and it will say, great, these devices are protected. If, however, you've turned around and said, you know what, I'm running with brand X. I've been with this vendor for the last 5 years, 10 years. I'm really happy with them. Nothing could make me move. Don't worry about it. The default setting for Windows Intune is to say, if these computers are already protected, do not install endpoint protection. So it will go out and it will say, do you have a firewall on? Great. Do you have antivirus? Are you current? Are you configured? Are you safe? Yes, you are. Wonderful. Leave you alone. So what it does is it will still report on those devices for you, even though it's not running endpoint protection. The way it does that is built into the operating system is something called the Security Center, and it says, look, are you protected? The applications that register, the AV agents, the firewall agents, all say, computer, we've installed, we're running, we're configured, you're safe. The Security Center then passes that information on to Windows Intune, and Intune says, even though you're running 3 different types of agents, 3 different types of antivirus solutions, you are still protected. And away you go. So from a supported operating system perspective, we support Windows XP Service Pack 2, Windows Vista, and Windows 7. We also provide support for all the business versions of Windows. So we don't support the Starter Edition or the Home versions. These were all the business versions of Intune. Of Windows. I'm going to take a quick breather. Are there any questions at this point? If not, I will continue. If there are some questions, I would love to answer them. I am assuming that is a no, just to be on the safe side. All right. So these policies I will discuss with you in a couple of minutes. Definitely one of my favorite components of Intune. So we've said that we can go out there and we can report on what software you have in the environment. What is the software? How many instances of it do I have? Who published it? And kind of interesting, what type of software is this? Is it a productivity tool? Is it an internet browser of some sort? What is it and why am I using it? So I can gather that information for you at the same time. Very interesting when I need to start pulling my reporting information. Now here is my software deployment. So I'm able to go out there and say I can deploy pretty much any application out there to any of my computers as long as they're connected to the internet. So I can push out anything that is a exe file or anything that is a MSI file. Those are two those are two industry standards. So away I go, I can push that out without any issue. Other things that I can do over here is I can go and say, you know what, only install this application on all x86 machines. That's an older 32-bit application. Don't install it on 64-bit machines. Or I can do the flip. Install it on all machines regardless of the processor. And you know what? Today is I'm not sure what the date is, the 23rd or something. Only install this software on the 15th of June. So I can set my deadlines and I can set who gets the software. So when I deploy it, I can say deploy this to my entire organization, or only deploy it to my headquarters, only deploy it to my New York team. I am able to specify who gets it and when they get it. This way I can make sure that my entire environment is running the same software by saying everybody's running Office, Adobe Reader, WinZip, apply at the all devices level, and software that is more specific, say my finance department, I can only deploy software out to that specific department as needed. Alright, so I've deployed all of the software. I'm getting information back on what software I have. Am I licensed for it? Am I over-licensed? Am I under-licensed? How do I make sense out of this information? So to simplify this for you, we've built in a licensing monitoring tool into Intune. What it does for you is it says, enter your volume licensing agreement details here, and we will populate what you have. So I'll see exactly what you have and how many licenses of it you have. In the reports that I will show you in a couple of minutes, it will then go and say, you know what, you're actually running 205 copies of Office Professional. You are running 90 copies of Office Standard Edition. It does not stop you from running more copies of software than you already have purchased. So in that example of 200 of Office Professional, it will say if you're running 210, 220, we are here to report. That is it. This is your information and your information alone. No one else has access to this information. So I could then go and say, come true up time. Great, I need to go buy 3 more copies of Office, 20 copies of Windows 7, whatever it is that I need to spend my time on. Now, what if we were able to take that same licensing engine and apply it to non-Microsoft software? So I can go out and I can say, I've got some off-the-shelf applications. In this example, Photoshop. I've got Corel Draw. I've got a couple of other applications out there that I've purchased. Or I can turn around and say, I've developed my own application for the business. It's a CRM application, a payroll application. It was designed for 5 people, 20 people, whatever it was designed for. Using this reporting tool, I can see that 30 people are using it, even though it was only designed for 20. So I could use that information to say, dear Mr. or Mrs. CFO, this was designed for 20, we're now running at 30. I need to make some software, hardware upgrades to that server to make sure that the people have a very good experience. It's also very useful to me if I'm having a chargeback model. Also very useful if I have people that are out in the field that I never ever see. So rather than calling up all of my employees around the country, around the city, around the world, here I have all of the information without them ever having to open up a VPN client. So here are the policies. So think about this for a second. I join your organization. 6 months later, I'm out of the office. and I have never ever come back to the office. I'm always on the road, I'm always selling, I'm an auditor, I'm a contractor, whatever the case is. Whatever Active Directory group policies you applied to my machine were outdated as soon as I left because I never refresh it. And that's not a problem of Active Directory, that's a problem because I never ever opened up the VPN software. I was always busy, always in a rush, always something. What these group policies, or not group policies, excuse me, what these policies allow me to do in Intune is to say, let me give you the core group policies that people have asked for, and I can apply it to you regardless of how you are connected. So I'm going to show you some of the examples of policies that we have created in the past. The first one over here is my Intune agent setting. So I can go out there and I can say, all right, let me show you what is inside of this policy. So first things first, only install the Endpoint Protection service, the antivirus component, on computers that are not protected. So if you have an AV solution, it won't install. If you have an AV solution and you're not happy with it, you could of course say, force the install, and then I will ask Intune to go and uninstall that AV package for me, the old one. Or I can say, you know what, I'm extremely happy with what I'm currently using. Intune, never ever install Endpoint Protection, regardless. The remaining settings over here are all antivirus focused. Things like what to scan, when to scan, how frequently to scan. When something gets found, what is it that I do? Do I notify somebody? Do I delete it? Do I quarantine it? Typically, your modern antivirus settings. What I wanted to focus on here was the update section. So, how frequently should Intune scan those machines? How frequently should it check for updates and applications? When I need to install something, do I install it every day or on a specific day of the week? So I could say only on a Friday at 5 a.m., at 8 p.m., whatever the case is, and I can configure that all over here. Or I could say, I need to install it as soon as I push it out, and then prompt the user. So a little box would come up saying, dear user, you have an application waiting for you. Click OK to install. Or I can make it completely silent and away it goes. Then I could say, look, if this package is going to cause the machine to reboot, can I allow the user to delay it? And if I say yes, how frequently can the user delay it and for how long? And I can input all of those settings just over here. So I can allow the user to say, let me first finish this job that I'm busy on. Let me save all of the files that I have open. Now I can install the software. The next component over here is when I add my own device to this environment. So I could have a computer that's my own personal computer, and it's called Dell OEM. And I log onto that as administrator. When somebody compiles a report, they're going to say, hold on, who is administrator and whose PC is Dell OEM? What this setting over here allows me to do is it says, hold on, whenever I add a device to my Intune environment, associate it to my corporate name. So I could have a computer called Dell OEM with administrator logged on, but it will be tied to Corbett at Microsoft. It's like, okay, so it's Corbett's machine, that's what it's called, now we know. Just simplifies it greatly. The last component here is background intelligent transfer service. What this means is, it doesn't matter how big your internet connection is, whether it is 64K line, whether it is 1 gigabyte, Intune will always say, I will use what is available. So if that network connection is heavily utilized, Intune might not even work. It will just say, look, let me just leave it alone, let the user do what the user needs to do. As that bandwidth becomes available, not total, available, Intune will say, great, here's a megabyte now, let me start using it. There's 20 kilobits here, let's use that. The whole idea is to make sure that we do not stop the user from doing what that is they are doing. We are completely transparent in the background. The other policy I wanted to show you here was the mobile device policy. So I'll show you that as well. So I'm going to go out there and say, look, I don't have the time or the effort to spend on a mobile device management solution because I have one system that's going to manage my computers, another system that's going to manage my servers, another system that's going to manage my virtual environment, and a completely separate system to manage my mobile devices. Can't I integrate a couple of these systems instead? So over here we're saying, let's use Intune to do that for you. Most of these users are going to deploy or use their mobile devices for contacts, calendaring, and email. So I'm going to use that to say, as you connect, if this device of yours supports all of the policies that I can set, I will allow you to connect. So I can make sure that you don't download email attachments. I want to make sure that we can set a password on your device. I want to make sure that if you get the password wrong, we wipe the device for you. So that way we can make sure that if your device ever gets lost or stolen, you are able to protect it by saying, let me remove all of my personal and business data so that the device is useless to the person who took it. I can also go out there and say, how about I enforce encryption on the device? So yep, I can make sure that if that device is lost or stolen, the chances of somebody breaking into it are reduced. Oh, and beyond that, I could also go and say, for all of those Android devices that have external storage, let me make sure that I encrypt that as well. Now, I kind of like the setting over here. So I can go and say, allow users to download attachments. I might say, look, I don't want to do that because I don't want users having copies of spreadsheets and documents running all over on a number of devices. Another reason I would do that is to say, I'm paying for that data plan. And these attachments can get very big. So, nope, I'm not going to allow you to do that. No downloading of email attachments for you. I can also make sure that the chances of me leaking data are also very reduced. Lastly, over here from an email perspective is I can say, let me go and make sure that everybody downloads email for the last day, last 2 days, last month, forever. This way I can also make sure that my data plan is not compromised, and I can also make sure that my data leakage is reduced. And then we've introduced a couple of device restrictions. I can go and say, this is a secure environment, switch off the camera, and do not allow the user to open up a web browser. Now once I've defined this policy, I can go and say, all right, let me go and deploy it again. Deploy it out to only the folks in Seattle. So anybody that is in that Seattle group will automatically have that policy apply to them. Plan B is I can go and create a baseline policy that says apply it to everybody, and then I can get more specific later on to say London has a different policy to Madrid, which has a different policy to Boston. So I can do a really nice job of making sure that all of my devices are protected regardless of where they are. So here are those reports that I was talking to you about. So I can go and say the reports have been greatly simplified. I can go and say, look, to almost anybody, I know you have no experience on Intune, but go and tell me what critical updates are needed for the folks out in New York City. Now, for an on-prem solution, it's typically going to take me a little bit of time to figure it out, but in Intune, it's pretty straightforward. What software updates are needed? I said that they had to be critical, and I said I'm only interested in the devices from New York. So I'm going to have a look down here. I'd go find New York. I'd say, great, there it is. Okay, view my report. And if I had saved it, if this was a very popular report or a very commonly requested report, I am able to save it, and I am able to say, let's go and load a previous report that I have saved. So, it's that time of the year again. You need to do a true-up with all of your software partners out there. And you're saying, great, I can either say view report here, and I can see everybody, what software they're running, regardless of the category. Or you could say, actually, no, I'm only interested in Adobe products for this month, because that's when I'm having my renewal discussion, and I can go say view report. Thus it will break out exactly who has anything written by Adobe or Adobe systems. Yeah, So we've kept it nice and simple, making sure that anybody can become an Intune expert in a matter of hours. Here's my inventory for hardware. So this would be very important if I said, all right, I'm busy buying a company, I'm merging with a company, I've got a new company coming on board, or I have a bunch of new contractors that are coming to do some work for me. I need to make sure that they have the right kind of hardware. The software part I can help them with, but the hardware I also need to make sure of. I need to make sure that they have the right operating system. I need to make sure that they're running the right type of hardware. I mean, are they running Dell PCs and Lenovo PCs? Was there a particular model that we might have had an issue with? So let's say, for argument's sake, that when we purchased the Dell 630, we purchased it with a very slow hard drive. We didn't think it was important at the time. They had a special on, they had a sale on, whatever. Now I can go say, focus only on that one particular model. Tell me where it is in the organization so I know how many new hard drives to go out and purchase. Also go out there and tell me how many of my computers have less than, let's say, 20 gigabytes of storage. So that's nice. I can go say, oops, you know what? We have enough computers here that need new hardware upgrades. Here are those licensing reports that I was telling you about earlier, where we're able to see who's got what software running in the environment. Before I jump into administration, are there any questions that anyone would like to ask at this time? I promise I don't bite. Perfect. Then I will move on. Every single Intune account comes pre-allocated with 20 gigabytes of online storage. So whether you use all 20 gigabytes or you use nothing of it, you get pre-allocated 20 gigabytes of storage. If for whatever reason that is not enough, you go, look, Corbett, I really, really need to have 25 gigabytes, 30 gigabytes, 80 gigabytes. There is nothing stopping you from saying, click, let me go and purchase additional storage. Let me just have a look here. What have I got? All right. How much disk space is it using? Okay. Oops, that's quite big. That's Office, I understand. Let me go and purchase more storage. Now that will run me through and it will say, great, how many more gigabytes do you need? Great, you need another 10 gigabytes. Wonderful. That's $2.50 per month. And you can buy as much storage as you want or as little storage as you need. But you are pre-allocated 20 gigabytes. The other things that you can see over here is it will tell you how many seats you are active for, how many seats you have, and how many seats you have deployed. So I'm going to walk you through this over here. So we said we would keep Intune simple. You've seen this before. This is Windows Update Services. What do I want to what category of software do I want to deploy? So is it Microsoft stuff? Is it my Bing stuff? Is it my Windows, Office, whatever? By classification, do I want to deploy tools and feature packs and updates? So I want to download all of the updates available to me. Or I could say, you know what, I really don't care about feature packs too much. Now, what if I were able to say, why don't I set up an automatic approval rule for you? What this does is it says the administrator is able to say what type of software, so Office or Windows, Windows 7, XP, or Vista, anytime that it is marked as critical or security or a service pack, I can automatically download it and approve it and ship it out to a particular group of users. So I can go say, these folks in headquarters, this here is my testing department, automatically approve and deploy software updates for these folks. So I can then go say, great, let me go and test those machines. Is everything working? All of my applications are running. Wonderful, it's done. Let me go and deploy it out to my headquarters and to my London office, etc. So it's a really nice way of making your patching cycle that much shorter by automating a lot of it. All right. Without a doubt, my favorite capability of Windows Intune is the alerting and monitoring. So why is this important? Why don't I go out and I go tell you how your environment is working. So this is important for me, so I can go and say, this is why my users are logging calls. This is the kinds of problems I'm getting, and it's because I rolled out a new driver, a new software package, a new update. I can gather information to see what is going on. So an easy example here. Tell me about applications that are just not working together. But don't tell me if it happens on one computer, because one computer is not a big deal. I'm a 100-seat organization. I'm a 1,000, 10,000-seat organization. One computer is nothing. It could be my test lab for all I know. So I can go and configure that to say, this is only applicable and only tell me if it happens to 1% of my users, 15%, 80% of my users. So I can configure that to say, tell me when it happens more than this. Beyond that, tell me if people have enough memory in their computers. Tell me if somebody's hard drive is about to fail on them. If this happens, I need to get to that person very quickly to say, look, dear user, your hard drive is about to die. We've ordered you a brand new hard drive. It will be here tomorrow. But just in case, we're going to do a quick backup on your machine to make sure you don't lose any data. How impressed would that end user be, knowing that A, you know what's going on, B, you avoided a problem on their machine, and C, you saved all of their data before they possibly lost it. Other things that I can do over here, tell me if the memory is enough in that machine. Oops, no, that memory is looking a little bit dodgy. I probably need to get replacement DIMMs there. Oh, but you know what, those memory modules that I bought over here will work in another machine. Great, so it's not a complete waste. Tell me how my disk is performing. Tell me how fast my hard drives are. Are they fast enough? So I can go and configure this to say, make sure that 20% of my computers do not experience this issue. That disk latency being too high is, and I can set a threshold. If that threshold gets exceeded, as in the hard drives are too slow, only then notify me. And don't notify my entire IT department, only notify Corbett, because Corbett is the software guy. If there is if somebody needs remote assistance over here, don't notify Corbett, because Corbett's not exactly the most pleasant person to speak to. Rather speak to Jennifer, because she's really helpful, very patient, and she's got a great personality when it comes to talking to end users that are upset. So I am able to set it up that only the relevant people get the right updates. So I can go and say over here, when I have a notification rule, only notify Corbett if it is a critical alert, and only if it comes from somebody on the East Coast. So if I had an organization that was split across the country, I could say only notify Corbett if it comes from New York, but if it comes from Boston, well, then you should notify Jennifer. And I can carve that out. So I really don't need to stand up any servers to support my environment. So how does Intune do all of this? What it does is it says, I need to deploy an agent onto your computer. The agent is small. The agent is about 8 megabytes in size. I can deploy that using Active Directory group policies, a logon script, a group policy preference, whatever management system I'm currently using right now. I could even email it out to the user, put it onto an FTP or web server. Any way that a user could access it, I could do it. In fact, I could email them out a link that says, click here. Once that happens, I'll get added to these groups, and then I'm able to say, wonderful, let me go and add you to whatever groups I need to. There are already policies and software waiting for you, so I can install what is needed. Now this has got to be my number 2 favorite feature in Intune. With more and more folks bringing their own devices into the organization, as an IT administrator, I can't approve software for every single person out there because I don't know who everyone is. So I will go and say, let me approve it for certain people or groups of people. What I can then do is I can say, great, you see this portal over here, the Windows Intune portal? There is a mobile version and there is a desktop version. So I'm going to open up the desktop version and show you what this does. So I click on the desktop version, it connects to my company's portal over there. It tells me who I am, so great, that's my username. I can go and say, oops, you know, what devices do I have? It's my home desktop and it's my work PC. But you know what? I've actually decommissioned that, so I can remove that, and I can add my new computer, my new tablet, my new Windows phone, my new whatever device I'm running. This way, what that does is it says that when I need to install an application, now I'm not in the office. I could be sitting in a coffee shop, I could be sitting at home. I can see that these applications have all been approved for me as an individual, not me as a computer. So I'll say, oops, I need to install Office. It will say, great. Corbett, these are the devices that have been associated to your name. I can go click, click, and install. If that application was mobile aware, and if I had a mobile device listed over here, I could also select my mobile device and it would install. The great part about all of this is the administrator creates the applications once and pushes it out. Whenever the end users want it, they can then decide to install it at that given time. I'm now going to go back to my, oops, let me just get rid of that there. Okay, come on. Oh, this is not working the way I wanted it to. Hold on, let me just do that. Alright. Now that same functionality, that whole company portal, would also work on my mobile device. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it from an Intune perspective that I wanted to show you. Is there anything more that you'd like me to discuss with you? Anything that you'd like me to go over again? Please, it would be my pleasure to go over anything that's not clear to you. So let's see.
Corbett, I know that we've got a couple of clients on the line. Maybe they could take a chance to ask if they've got any trouble issues right now that maybe you could help out with.
Absolute pleasure. Please, any questions you have, whether you want to write it down or ask me verbally. Oh, just in case anyone's nervous, I'll stop the recording. And